an original.
From Story Studio Network.
Welcome to The Fatigue Fixer, the podcast where we get real about why you're so tired and what you can do about it. Every 2 weeks, we'll gather here for honest, heart-to-heart conversations about reclaiming your energy, your patience, and feeling truly at home in your body. I'm Dr. Sarah Vedmonkar, a naturopathic doctor, Menopause Society certified practitioner, Enneagram 3 entrepreneur with enough business ideas to last me 10 lifetimes, and a hockey and baseball mom. Over the past 15 years, I've helped thousands of women just like you cut through the confusion and finally feel like themselves again. And now, I want to hear from you too. Use the link in the show notes below to leave me a voicemail, to share your story, give feedback on an episode, ask a question, or tell me what's been exhausting you. Together, we'll get to the root of what's really draining your energy and give you the tools, clarity, and encouragement you need to fix your fatigue. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to The Fatigue Fixer. Before we begin, I want to let you know that this is actually going to be my last episode. When I started this podcast almost 3 years ago, my goal was to have a place to share my thoughts, my ideas, and to bring the conversations that I was having in my office behind closed doors out into the public space. And I am so proud to have done that over these past 56 episodes. I have also felt most of the time that podcasting was not actually bringing you my best voice. And I've explored different ways to show up here and different ways of doing this. And as much as I love podcasting, I also feel like I'm ready to close this chapter and to see what might be next. One of the things I'm quite good at and that I'm proud of is letting go of things that I'm good at, but that are not actually that fulfilling. And I really want you to hear that, because if you are also a high achiever and a lot of things come naturally to you, it can be really easy to spend a lot of your time doing things because you're able to do them, and probably because you're also very good at doing them, but that don't actually feel that rewarding, or that are not actually sharing your unique gifts in the best way. So I am good at podcasting, I get great feedback from this podcast and I don't mind doing it, but I also don't love it. And I know that sometimes giving up something that's really good is the only way to make space for something that's even better. And a lot of times I think we're waiting for the better thing to fall in our laps before we're willing to let go of the really good things. And in my experience, it's the opposite. You have to make space. You have to create space for the next thing to land, for the next thing to come find you. So that is what I'm doing, not without a heavy heart. So after a lot of careful thought, I have decided to step away from podcasting for now, because I never want to close a door completely. And get back to just other ways of teaching that feel more aligned for me. If you've been here since the beginning, you will remember our first episode, which aired on November 1st, 2023, the one where your pants don't fit, which was all about learning to accept our changing bodies through perimenopause, and how that little thing that a lot of us do, which is keeping that stash of pants that don't fit you in your closet, right? Those skinny jeans or those, your favorite pants, your favorite dress, right? Those clothes that we keep in our closets in the hope that one day we will be able to fit back into them. It actually just keeps us in a state of dissatisfaction. And it also fuels this diet culture delusion of this idea of getting back, as if we could go back in time to a younger self, a thinner self, a self that fit in those pants. That episode 1, continues to be one of our most popular episodes. And since I just graduated from a 1-year in-depth fellowship training in obesity medicine, I wanted to end where we started. Because even though there are endless reasons why women are tired, and we have explored 56 different of those ideas in this podcast, one of, if not the biggest strain on women's energy is our desire to be thinner. And I recently saw a post that said women don't actually desire weight loss. What they desire is to be free of the desire to want to lose weight. What does that mean? What a lot of us are actually seeking when we try to lose weight, part of it might be the weight loss, but part of it is we think, I'll finally be able to not think about weight loss. I'll finally be able to feel comfortable, right? That desire that we have, so many of us have, and so many of us have had for decades to lose weight, that desire takes up a ton of mental real estate. It takes up a ton of energetic real estate. Because when you are constantly wanting to be something that you are not, it is exhausting. And what diet culture has convinced us of is that if and when we lose the weight, that feeling will go away, that mental loop about, I got to lose the weight, I'm too big, I'm too fat, I got to do this. We think that voice is quietly going to go away and we will live happily ever after. But that is not usually the case, because if you actually do lose the weight, a lot of times now, the voice is going to just be worried about regaining the weight and it coming all back. So now you're just going to have a new loop in your head, right? That nagging voice doesn't go quiet. It just finds something new to obsess about. Another reason why a lot of us desire to be smaller is that as a society, we have associated weight gain, bigger bodies, and obesity with all kinds of negative attributes. Most of us don't have a very positive association with people who live in bigger bodies. So if you are truly honest with yourself, what are some of the first words that come to mind if you picture someone with obesity? Is it that they're lazy? Is it that they're unmotivated? Maybe you might think they're dumb and they just don't know what they should be doing. When we ask Canadians what they think causes obesity, here's what people say. 44% of people respond that obesity is caused by overeating, physical inactivity, a high-fat diet, food addiction, and a lack of willpower. 38% of people say it's the price of food and it's the marketing of unhealthy foods. 28% say genetic factors, metabolic defects, or an endocrine disorder, endocrine being hormones. And 27% say poor nutritional knowledge, psychological problems, restaurant eating, and repeated dieting. So if we look at the biggest chunk, the most common response was overeating, physical inactivity, high-fat diet, food addiction, and willpower. In other words, all things that are within people's control. Now, I'm not saying that weight is not in your control. There are lots of habits and behaviors that you can or can't do that will 100% affect your weight, right? Our behaviors 100% play into our weight. But this idea that our weight is just 100% in our control and that if we just ate less and exercised more and had more willpower, we would lose weight is a very simple, narrow way to look at the complex condition that is obesity. And the more we learn about what drives people's weights, we are looking at a mix of genetics, we're looking at environmental factors like food prices, food availability, how walkable the place they are, where they live. And yes, their behaviors, right? What are they eating? Are they moving? Do they have a sedentary job? What's going on with their mental health? So all of these factors come together. So like the answer, the correct answer, if you were taking this quiz, would technically be all of the above. It is all of these things. Yes, it's overeating and physical inactivity. It's also the cost of food. It's also genetics. It's also sometimes endocrine disorders. It's also nutritional knowledge and psychological problems. It's all of the above. But again, most of us tend to focus on the things that are in people's control, because then it allows us to think if those people just did what they were quote unquote supposed to, they wouldn't be that heavy. And so much of how we view obesity and so much of what we think about people with obesity stems from weight bias or weight stigma, which sadly there is a lot of. It's really interesting when you read about different stigma. Weight stigma is one of the last forms of stigma that is still quite socially acceptable, right? Racism, not very socially acceptable. It's still out there, but most people don't think it's a great thing. Weight bias kind of sits in this own category where we feel like it's okay to give people unsolicited advice. It's okay to have negative associations about people with obesity. So weight bias is the negative weight-related attitudes, beliefs, assumptions, and judgments in society that are held about people living in large bodies. And sadly, this stuff is everywhere. So when we ask people with obesity where they have been or where they have experienced stigma and bias, they have experienced it in their homes. Over 75% have experienced weight stigma from their families, with over 50% having experienced it from their mothers, who also, I just want to clarify, were likely victims of diet culture themselves. 40 to 60% are experiencing it with their partner. And fathers do this too. 35 to 48% have experienced it from their dads. When we go to the doctor, 60 to 73% of people have experienced weight bias in our healthcare system. And today I'm going to talk a bit more about internalized weight bias, which is what happens when we start to believe all the negative things about overweight and obesity, when we start to believe them about ourselves. What does that do to our weight? What does that do to our eating behaviors? But I also don't want to gloss over the fact that this is happening in doctors' offices, and there is a ton of weight stigma in our medical system. So if you are someone living in a bigger body, it is a reality that your experience in the healthcare system is sadly going to be different and probably poorer than people who live in quote unquote normal weight or lower weight, kind of what we've deemed as acceptable. If you went to school, you probably had classmates who stigmatized you. So that's 70 to 80% have had it from their classmates. Your ever-loving friends who swear they're trying to help you, right? If you've ever done this, like if you've ever made a comment about someone's weight or made a comment about, you should try this thing that I try. I want you to not like feel a massive amount of guilt because that's not going to fix anything. I want you to take that and acknowledge like, oh, I have some weight stigma inside of me because we all do. And that you probably thought you were helping your friend. And part of what I want you to hopefully walk away from today's conversation with is that we all have weight stigma. The sooner we can recognize it, the better. And that we want to not weaponize it against the people that we are supposedly trying to help. And we also don't want to weaponize it against ourselves because, as I'll share in a few minutes, it is doing the exact opposite thing that you think it's going to do. And then last but not least, when you go to work, there is an over 50% chance that your coworkers are going to also have weight bias that is leveled against you. There is no escaping weight bias. And I think for those of us who have never lived in a bigger obese body, we have no idea what it is like navigating daily life because there is nowhere you can go where you are not at risk for experiencing weight bias and weight stigma. Now, when we take those beliefs, those negative beliefs, those stereotypes, those judgments, and we apply them to ourselves, that becomes something called internalized weight bias. This is one of the, my favorite things of all the things I learned about obesity over the past year. I think internalized weight bias is the thing that I find most fascinating because I can recognize it so clearly now. And it's shocking how common it is and how deep it is and how women don't realize the negative effects that it's having on their life. Internalized weight bias is the extent to which individuals living with obesity endorse or start to believe negative weight bias beliefs about themselves, right? So they take all of that like fat, lazy, unmotivated, overeating, under exercising. They take all of that like stigma, that soup of stigma, and they start to believe it about themselves. And what this sounds like, if you're wondering like, do I have this? Listen to some of these. This can sound like, there are different ways. These are some of the ways it can sound like. I am less attractive than most other people because of my weight. I feel anxious about being overweight because of what people might think of me. I wish I could drastically change my weight. Whenever I think a lot about being overweight, I feel depressed. I hate myself for being overweight. My weight is a major way that I judged my value as a person. I don't feel that I deserve to have a really fulfilling social life as long as I'm overweight. This is a big one. I hear this a lot. Because I'm overweight, I don't feel like my true self. Isn't it interesting that most of our true selves are thin? Why is that? Because again, we've been convinced that a thin self is a happier self, a healthier self, a better self. So of course, we all feel more like ourselves when we're thin because we've been told and convinced that that is the ideal state to be. Because I'm overweight, I just said that one. Because of my weight, I don't understand how anyone attractive would want to date me. So these kinds of thoughts, and sometimes it's not as overt as that, right? Sometimes it's pay attention to your response when you see yourself in the mirror. I shared in the last episode what happened when I saw a picture of me recently playing softball, and I was like, who the hell's ass is that? That can't be my ass. Notice the mental dialogue that you have around your weight and your body. Because if it is anything like mine, even though I'm working very hard to change it, it's often quite negative and it's quite critical. And that is that internalized weight bias. It is that internal monologue that we have that is so judgmental and so negative about ourselves and our bodies. And again, just in case you have believed or you have convinced yourself that the only way that you will lose weight is by being hard on yourself or being strict on yourself, or that your overweight friends really need to hear about your latest macro experiment, they don't. Okay? Let me be very, very clear. Weight bias makes everything worse. It does not motivate people. It doesn't help them eat better. It doesn't make them go to the gym. It actually does the exact opposite of all of that. Because anytime you experience bias, whether it is external coming from someone else, your friend, your coworker, your mom, your kid, your partner, or it is coming from that incredibly mean, judgmental voice in your head, that bias creates stress. And what that stress does is it impacts a whole bunch of different behaviors and a whole bunch of different systems. Are you tired of being told everything is normal, even though you're exhausted and don't feel like yourself? You deserve better care than that. In my one-on-one practice, I help women just like you do a deep dive to figure out what's really draining your energy. Together, we'll get answers and create a clear, personalized plan to help you start feeling like yourself again. If you live in Ontario or the Outaouais region and you're ready for the next step, visit drsarahv.ca to learn more and book your appointment today. Because being tired all the time isn't normal, and you don't have to keep pushing through it. When we look at what it does in terms of our eating and our physical activity, we actually see that it increases binge eating and it increases calorie consumption, right? When you talk to your friend about her weight, saying that you're worried about her health, she doesn't go home and make a salad. She goes home and feels like shit because her best friend just commented on her body again, as if she doesn't know how to eat healthy, as if she doesn't know that she's overweight, as if she hasn't probably been trying her entire life to get thinner. She doesn't go home and make a salad. She's more likely to go home and binge. She's more likely to go and eat more calories. She is more likely to engage in maladaptive ways to control her weight, whether that is severe restriction, whether that's laxatives, purging, etc. She's more likely to engage in disordered eating. She is less motivated for exercise, and she's going to do less physical activity. Now, replace your friend with you. When you have negative comments about yourself and you are trying to whip yourself into action through negative thoughts and thinking like, I hate myself, I need to change this, I have to lose weight, all of that type of narrative does not create weight loss. It actually creates the opposite reaction of what you're trying to do. And part of that is because your body is also responding. When we have higher levels of weight stigma, we see higher levels of cortisol, we see higher levels of inflammation, we see higher levels of blood sugar and blood pressure. So we're creating basically this like metabolic soup inside of us that makes weight loss even more difficult and will also just make you feel like crap, right? If you have high cortisol, high inflammation, high blood sugar, you're not going to feel very good. Then we look at the mental health effects. And we definitely see more psychological distress. We see higher rates of depression and anxiety. We see that people have lower self-esteem. They have poorer body image. They are more likely to engage in substance abuse, and it can even increase suicidality. Again, I think we need to be very aware of this idea that talking negatively about ourselves or other people is somehow going to create a positive change. It's just not. And then all of that creates worse blood sugar control. They have a harder time managing if they have any chronic diseases. They have a poor quality of life. They actually are more likely to avoid healthcare. So one of the things that's fascinating when we look at the outcomes of obesity is that we will often see things like higher rates of diabetes, higher rates of cancer, higher rates of chronic disease. And part of what's really tricky is to figure out, are those things directly the cause, are those things directly the result of having obesity or extra weight or the behaviors that led to that? Or is it also that obese people are not going to the doctor for their checkups because they don't want to get lectured about their weight? Is it that the doctors are not running the same tests and doing the same preventative screenings for people with obesity? So those people are actually being misdiagnosed, or they're being diagnosed later because everything is being blamed on their weight. You can see how this becomes like a very complex thing that is going to impact people, again, who have obesity and overweight, is going to impact them from all angles. So this is why I really wanted to talk about this subject. I think it's such an important subject. And especially as a healthcare provider, I need to be really mindful and aware of my own biases and my own stigma, because I'm bringing that into my appointments. And if I am not being very careful, I'm actually perpetuating this problem. And again, sadly, our medical system is a huge perpetrator of weight stigma and weight bias. Again, when you believe negative things about yourself because of your weight, you are not going to magically start going to the gym. You're not going to eat more salads. You're not going to do all these great things. You're going to do the opposite. You're actually going to avoid exercise. You're going to blame yourself more. You're going to disengage. You're going to have more negative eating patterns. And you're going to have less self-acceptance, less positive self-talk. So this stuff really, really doesn't work. We also see what's super interesting is that when we look at some of the biggest predictors of weight regain, so for people who do lose the weight, no matter how they lost the weight, diet, exercise, medication, surgery, one of the biggest predictors of weight regain is internalized weight bias. So you can lose the weight. If you still have all these negative associations about overweight people, you're more likely to bring the weight back. I want you, if you are on a weight loss journey, and there's nothing wrong, some people would benefit for sure from having weight loss where it is medically indicated. They have clinical obesity where we are seeing negative outcomes that are probably quite closely related to their obesity. If you are trying to lose weight, addressing weight bias, in my opinion, should be one of the foundational pieces of your plan. If you are not looking at your own bias and doing some of the work to start to change that narrative, to unlearn and rewire some of those thoughts and beliefs about yourself and about people with overweight and obesity, your weight loss journey is going to be more difficult. And this is something we don't talk about. I have rarely seen any weight loss plans talk about this. And I think it is one of the reasons, there are many reasons why weight loss is hard. This is one of them. It's the elephant in the room that no one's talking about that I've seen. You will never hate yourself into healthier habits. You will never hate yourself back into your skinny jeans. In fact, keeping those skinny jeans in your closet is a form of internalized weight bias that this isn't the real you, right? This body, this bigger body is just a temporary body. My real body is the one that I had when I was 20 years old and had very little stress and no children and walked everywhere and it was great. That's my real body. This is a loner. I don't know what this thing is. That is weight bias, right? Weight bias is believing that your body's not supposed to change, that it's supposed to look the way that it looked when you were 20 until the day you die. That's also weight bias. We talked about this in episode 1. Give those pants away to someone who fits in them. They'll be so happy. Buy yourself a pair of pants, right? Nothing makes me happier than when I get messages or a patient finally is like, I just went and I bought pants that fit me. And it's like the relief that comes over them. Because you're not spending your days in a garment squeezing you and reminding you that you have changed, right? Who wants to sit in a pair of pants that don't fit you? If I can end this podcast, if I can leave you with one parting thought, one idea to really let sink into your bones that will have made this journey so worthwhile for me, it is this. Your body is not broken. It is not a DIY project that you should be constantly trying to improve and upgrade. Your body is your home. It is the vessel that allows you to move through this life. And what a gift that is. I was sitting in church a few months ago, and I was listening to our pastor repeat throughout the sermon this idea that God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. And I had this realization that my body isn't a mistake. It is a gift. And I believe that I was given this body and not some other different body for a purpose. And my general belief is that the things that happen in my life, the good, the bad, the boring, those things are happening for me. They're not happening to me. Therefore, this body, this exact body that I have at 44 years old, that has changed, that has had seasons where it was smaller and then bigger, that is no accident. It is part of my journey. It is part of my story. It is part of my education here on what Liz Gilbert calls Earth School. This is part of my learnings here on Earth School about acceptance and appreciation. And I truly believe that if I didn't have this specific body, I wouldn't have the behaviors and the habits that I have. I don't think I would be as compassionate with some of my patients. I really believe that I was given this specific body for a purpose because it's part of my journey. It's part of my learning. So I hope that wherever you are in your body or your weight journey, I hope that you can now recognize how common and pervasive weight stigma is both around you and everywhere you go, but also inside you, in your thoughts and your beliefs and the stories that you tell about your body, the ways you talk about yourself. And if you walk away just with that recognition that we all have weight stigma, that it is having a very negative impact on the people around us, but also on ourselves, I want you just to start to notice and pay attention and to see when that voice, right? Leslie and I talked about this in the last episode. When we see those pictures of ourselves, our first thoughts are still, what the fuck? But we have done the work to very quickly pull out of what the fuck to, yeah, my ass looks big in that video. And I just hit not a home run, but I almost just hit a home run. Look how strong my body is. Look at me playing softball for the first time in my life at 44 and killing it and having a good time, right? I can catch it and I can reframe it much more quickly. To everyone who has been here, who has listened to these episodes and who has shared them, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, the biggest thank you. To those of you who have been here from the beginning and who have cheered me on and sent me DMs and left reviews and voicemails, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are part of what made this journey so rewarding. And for those of you who are maybe newer, who have just found this podcast, I hope you will go back and listen to some of the earlier episodes, which were actually some of our most popular, like episode 1, the one where your pants don't fit. This is not the end of my journey. It is just the end of this chapter. And I hope you will stay tuned to see what the next chapter brings, because I don't know yet, but I am creating space in my life, in my mind, in my creative juices to figure out what that is. And I hope you will follow along with whatever comes next. I love you. Thank you for being here. And I will see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. I know your time is precious, so it means so much to me that you're here. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a woman in your life who could use a little extra energy and encouragement today. It's a small way to show her you care, because we're all in this together. Wondering what the next step is? Find out what's really draining your energy by taking my fatigue fingerprint quiz at fatiguefixer.ca/quiz. You'll discover which of the 5 most common types of fatigue you're dealing with, like frazzled fatigue, where your body's exhausted but your mind won't turn off, or drained fatigue, where no amount of sleep ever feels like enough. Your results will include recommended labs to ask your doctor about, plus my top suggestions for habits and practices that can help you start feeling more rested, calm, and in control. Because here's the thing, being tired all the time isn't normal, and you deserve to feel like yourself again. Thanks again for listening, and remember, it's not all in your head. I believe you, and we'll figure this out together.
This is SSN.
Story Studio Network.